A trip to an island aboard a helicopter seems interesting? Well, most of you will think instantly of some adventure or of some vacation. And if the first word, adventure, is exactly what we will be experiencing while playing Forbidden Island, the second one, vacation, is absolutely not the correct one. Hello, this is Michel Leviathan Sorbet and this is a new episode of Wojennik TV. Today I'm taking you to an island, but not a classical one with hotels, with resorts. This will be a forbidden island. We'll be taking a closer look at a game published in 2010 by Gamewright and in Poland by Rebel. The title of the game is Forbidden Island. This is a game designed by Matt Leacock, who created Pandemic and all the Pandemic franchise. This is a title for 2 to 4 players. The time of play will be somewhere around 30 minutes and the minimum age of the player will be 10 or higher. This is a cooperative game, so although we have an information on the box that this game works in a group from 2 to 4 people, it's absolutely possible to play it also solitaire, because in this game we will be having no hidden information. It's absolutely possible to play it solo. In the game we will land on the Forbidden Island. This is an island which centuries ago was part of a powerful empire of the Archeans. The Archeans controlled the 4 Earth's elements thanks to powerful relics. And our objective will be to find those relics on the island and then securely leave it, because the island, from the moment when we touch the ground, will start to be flooded. It will start to disappear under the ocean's surface. So this will be a race against time. Not only we will have to find those relics, not only we will have to reach our landing place where the helicopter can lift us, we'll have to do it in a certain amount of time. Today I'd like to show you the game, I'd like to explain you how it works, and at the end I'd like to share with you my final thoughts and my final recommendation if, after 10 years from its first release, this game is still a valid and interesting title. So let's start. Here is Forbidden Island prepared to play a new game. The first and most important element that we'll be using while playing this game are the terrain tiles. As you can see, we have several of them, and each time we will prepare a different island, a different set of tiles. This structure will be always the same in terms of its shape, but it will be each time different because the tiles will be randomly put onto the playing area. Those tiles are double-sided. They represent the different parts of the island that we can pass through, that we can visit or explore. But as I said, they have 2 sides. The first one is the basic one, when a structure is not flooded. And the second one is, as you can see, a blue one, indicating that the structure, that the part of the island has already been flooded and that the level of water has risen. Apart from preparing those elements, we will also prepare the water level indicator. As you can see, we have several levels of water possible. We start at the level that we want to start, so we can start at the beginning level for players who only discovered the game, but for more experienced players we can, for instance, choose the elitary or even legendary level, which are the hardest one to win. Each player will randomly choose one of the possible characters, and we have 6 of them in this game. As you can see, each of them has their own name and a special ability. So we can become a messenger, we can become the pilot, the diver, the engineer, the explorer, or the navigator. Each of them will have their own card with a special ability and a special pawn in the same color that the card is printed. So after choosing such a character, we also take our pawn and we place it onto the starting area. Each character has their own pawn of their own color, and there is one tile indicating the starting area for each player. For instance, for the messenger, the starting area will be the silver entrance, and we will put our pawn onto it, even though this is a flooded tile, because at the game's start, when preparing the island, we will place the tiles and then we will randomly draw 6 cards from the Forbidden Island deck, and we will flip over those 6 tiles, which means that at the game start, 6 of the tiles are already flooded. They are still part of the gaming area, and we can secure them, we can flip them once again to their main side. But they can also be flooded once more, and if a tile becomes flooded a second time, it is entirely removed from the game. So this is a possible danger. Now, what is the objective of the players in Forbidden Island? Our main objective is to gather four treasures. So we have to collect 4 treasures. Then, as a group, we have to meet at Fool's Landing, a special tile, and we have to use a special card, the helicopter card, enabling us to leave the island before it is entirely flooded. So this is a cooperative game, and we all win or we all lose. There are several losing conditions. We can lose the game because of several factors. The first one is if Fool's Landing becomes flooded and removed entirely from the game. We cannot leave the island, therefore we lose. If both tiles on which we can acquire a given treasure, for instance, the Earth Stone can be acquired only on one of those 2 tiles. If both of those tiles are removed from the game, we also lose if we haven't already found this treasure. Thirdly, we can lose if the level of the water rises up to its maximum deadly level, meaning that the entire island is flooded. We also lose. So this will be also a race against time. Finally, we can also lose if one of the players is on a flooded tile, which is removed from the game, and the character cannot jump onto another tile. Jump into security, because when a tile becomes flooded a second time, it is removed from the game, and each player's pawn has to instantly move to another adjacent tile. But movement in Forbidden Island is only made in straight lines, so we cannot move diagonally to another tile. In such a case, this pawn would be stuck, it wouldn't be able to jump onto any adjacent tile, and it would be lost. A pawn lost means all players lose, because we play collectively, so we win as a team or we lose as a team. How a turn of Forbidden Island looks. Firstly, what we do is we execute 3 actions, and we have 4 types of actions. The first one is to move our pawn. Movement, as I said earlier, is done only straight, in a straight line, so upwards, downwards, left or right. We cannot move diagonally, apart from the explorer, who has a special capacity. He can move diagonally, which is extremely useful. So one tile is 1 action, so I can use 3 actions in order to move up to 3 tiles. The second possible type of action which we can make is to secure, is to repair a tile. As I said, some tiles will become flooded. In order to secure them, in order to avoid them being removed from the game, we can try to flip them. In order to do this, we have to be on such a tile or on a tile adjacent to this tile. Again, only in a straight line. So diagonally, that won't work. If I wanted to repair this bridge, I would have to be here because that tile would be adjacent, directly on the tile or on one of the adjacent tiles. Here it wouldn't work, here it wouldn't work either. So using one action, I can flip over a tile, securing it and prolonging the game. The third type of action possible is to give one of our cards to a fellow explorer whose pawn is on the same tile that ours. Before the game starts, we will draw 2 cards from a special treasure deck, and in this deck we will find 3 types of cards. The first type of cards are the treasure cards, which are associated to all the 4 treasures which will be looking on the island. The first one is the Earthstone, and we will find also cards related to this treasure in the deck. The second treasure is the Crystal of Fire, which we also will have to find on the island. Thirdly, we have the magnificent Earthstone, the Statue of the Wind, which is associated to this fantastic miniature. And lastly, the Ocean's Chalice, which also is a fantastic relic which we can find on this island. So we have to acquire all 4 of them in order to win the game. And in order to acquire such an artifact, we have to possess 4 cards of the associated type, and we have to travel to one of the locations where such a treasure can be found. Each treasure can be found on 2 different tiles. For instance, here, as I explained earlier, the Earthstone can be found. If I manage to travel to one of those locations, having 4 Earthstone cards in my playing area, I can discard those cards and acquire this artifact. Now, it has absolutely no impact on gameplay who has those treasures. So when playing, for instance, a 4 players game, 1 player can have 3 treasures and 1 player 1, 2 player can have none, and still they win as a team. The most important is to cooperate and to enable the whole team to gather all 4 treasures. So in order to have those 4 cards in your playing area, because the maximum number of cards that you can have is 5, you will have to give some of your cards to your fellow gamers. And one of those actions is giving cards. So when you are on the same tile, you can give one of the cards from your playing area to one of your gamers who takes this card into his or her own playing area. The last possible action finally is, as I explained a few moments ago, taking a treasure from one of the locations where such a treasure can be found, using and discarding 4 treasure cards. The second type of cards that we find in this deck are special cards, and we can find sandbags, which allow us to flip over flooded tiles, so to secure some parts of the island. And finally also helicopter cards, which enable us both to move quickly from one side of the island to another one, because it enables us to move very quickly and to transport, to be airlifted to another part of the island. Or it can enable us also to win the game, because in order to win we have to find the 4 treasures, we have to gather at Fool's Landing and use a helicopter card in order to fly from the disappearing island. The third type of cards which are inside this deck are those cards indicating that the level of water rises. Because after our 3 actions, we pass to the second phase of the game, during which we draw 2 cards from this deck. And if we happen to draw this special card indicating the level of water rising, we have to we have to increase the level of water using this meter. So each time the level of water increases, it can cause the increase of number of cards that we have to draw from the flood deck. At the beginning, if we start at the 2 basic levels, we have to draw 2 cards. Then we'll have to draw 3, then 4, and finally at the game's end, we'll have to draw 5 cards from the flood deck. So this is pretty much the indicator of how much time's left in order to find the treasures and securely leave the island. So we draw 2 cards, and apart from increasing the level of water, we do also one very important thing. We take all the cards from the discarded pile of the flood deck, we shuffle them, and we place them on top of the deck. Which means that during the third and final phase of your turn, when we draw cards from this deck in the number indicated by the current water level, we will be drawing cards which were already drawn before. So for instance, if we draw a card which was already flooded and we didn't secure it, so we didn't flip it over, it will be instantly removed from the game alongside with the flooded card. And so on. So we'll be drawing 2 cards if the level is 2. If the level is 3, we'll be drawing 3 cards, which means that tiles will be slowly and then very fast, very quickly disappearing from the island, making our objectives more difficult, because empty spaces are prohibited from movement. We cannot pass through empty spaces. So for instance, if a character is stuck here, he cannot move diagonally, he will have to move in a straight line in order to avoid passing through empty spaces. Of course, we can use also the helicopter lift, which will greatly increase our mobility. After doing the actions, after drawing cards, after flooding new spaces, we end our turn and it's up to our colleague to play his or her turn. We play in such a way until we manage to collect all the 4 treasures and safely leave the island from Fool's Landing, or until the moment that one of the end game conditions is met. Those are basically all the rules which are used while playing Forbidden Island. Now I'd like to invite you to my final thoughts. I'd like to give you my opinion about this game. I'd like to tell you what I like in this title and what I think are the weaker points of the Forbidden Island. Forbidden Island is a game which I have kept unopened for several years. I have received it as a present gift some 6 or 7 years ago, and it's only recently that I've decided to open it. And I must say that I was quite pleased with the gameplay, and I liked the game in terms of what I expected, because this is a light game. This is a game which you can easily play with non-gamers, with players who seek for something quick and quite easy. So when looking for the strong points of this title, I'd say that this is a very easy and at the same time a very accessible title. This is a game which can be easily completed in 30 minutes, and you can quickly restart, you can quickly reset the game and play one more time. So in terms of the ease of explaining the rules, of the gameplay, and also of the time of play, this is a very quick, even I'd say this is a filler game which you can use when searching for something light, when searching for something quick, and at the same time quite entertaining. I'd say that this game is a game which at the moment it got published, so more than 10 years ago, was published as a high quality game, as a high quality product. And this is an interesting thing to observe, because at the time when this game got published, so in 2010, there weren't a lot of games using miniatures. There weren't a lot of games published not in standard boxes, but in cans or in tins, which is the case of Forbidden Island. So this game was published as a high quality game with excellent components. And when looking at those components after 10 years, we might be a little bit surprised, because this is how the entire hobby, how the entire board gaming world changed during those 10 years. Judging this product in 2010, we would say, wow, fantastic miniatures. This is a really high quality game. And those cards, those tiles, those are excellent. But now, in 2021, when looking at this game, we might be surprised that this was a game published as a high quality design. Well, what changed from 2010 until now? The quality of the components of the games which are released skyrocketed. We are used to games which have tons of miniatures of an excellent quality. We are used to games which use hundreds, thousands of excellent cards with great quality, with fantastic artwork. We are used to games which have enormous boxes with expansions, with tons of additional stuff. It's not surprising. It's the level of expectations of the community, of the gamers, which skyrocketed compared to what it was 10 years ago. So this game right now, compared to nowadays games, is of a mediocre quality. I'd say so. But we cannot judge games only by comparing them to contemporary designs. When it got released, it was a really high quality game, and people, when looking at Forbidden Island, could say, wow, excellent miniatures. And they would be right, because at the time it got published, we didn't have a lot of games using that such type of component. And even now, when we judge this game based on how it works, we could say that those miniatures could have been easily replaced by cards. The game would work absolutely the same way. You just collect treasures, and if you do have 4 treasure cards, you discard them and you get another card which represents the relic, for instance the earth relic or the wind relic, which you are looking for. And the game would work absolutely the same way. But we got those miniatures, which is a nice addition, which is something additional, which makes you want them more if they were cards. The second or the third thing which I'd like to underline is the fact that this is a game which is a cooperative game, in which you will get you will get a lot of interaction between players. There will be a lot of table talk. You'll have to carefully plan your moves. You'll have to discuss what to do. You'll have to decide when to give cards to your fellow gamers, when to acquire new cards, what locations to go to, etc. So there will be a lot of interaction. There will be a lot of table talk. So the level of integration between players will be quite high. This is the same thing that applies also to Pandemic, another Matt Leacock design, in which also we had to cooperate, we had to use our skills, and we had to plan ahead in order to decide what to do. This applies also to Forbidden Island. The game sometimes is really decided at the last moment. So we'll get very interesting, very tense games, a lot of emotions, because sometimes we'll be leaving successfully the island at the very last moment. Sometimes we'll not be able to, we'll lose the game due to some circumstances, but in general you'll be having fun with this game and you won't be disappointed in terms of how the game played. You'll have a nice feeling when playing this title. So what in my opinion are the weaker points of Forbidden Island? I'd say that the first one concerns not even the gameplay, but this is also a thing which doesn't influence the way how I judge this game, but which again shows how the community and how the board gaming world changed during this decade. Because on the box of this game, even on Board Game Geek somewhere else, I have seen an information that this game is for 2 to 4 players. But this is a cooperative game. This is a game which, due to no hidden content, can be absolutely played solo. It's solitaire suitable in 100%. So when looking again at games which are published nowadays, we can see that a lot of them are solitaire games, solo games, or games with a solo mode. This is a thing which wasn't very frequent, wasn't very often 10 years ago, and very often this solo aspect of gaming was neglected by publishers. Things changed a lot, not only due to the pandemic, but also due to the evolution of our hobby. Nowadays, we have a lot more games designed strictly as solitaire games, and also games which are published as games for 2 or more players, but which have dedicated rules or dedicated modes for solo play. So this is again a comparison of how games were designed, were published, and how they are nowadays. Forbidden Island, if published today, would be published as a game for 1 to 4 players, not for 2 to 4. It would be underlined that this game is absolutely soloable, and I think it would increase the interest because a lot of people are searching for solo games, especially nowadays due to the pandemic. So this is not a minus, this is not a weak point of the game. It only shows how our hobby evolved and how designers, how publishers thought what was their approach to games some time ago and what it is at most times nowadays. But this game has some weaker points. The first one, I'd say, are some rule ambiguities, because this is a very easy game. This game should have a crystal clear rulebook. It doesn't. Let me give you an example. This game is, as I said, quite easy. The rulebook is very short. But on Board Game Geek, in the rules section of the forum, we have more than 160 threads concerning the rules. This is huge. And I know that the game is already 10 years old, but even so, this game is not very complicated, but still it has some issues. Some things were or are not extremely clearly explained in the rules, and this causes some doubts, and it makes people wonder how to play some basic mechanics. Problems concern timing, because you have some issues when deciding if you can use, for instance, a helicopter lift card the moment you draw it, or do you can you use the helicopter card on the last turn if you're stuck on fool's landing, and if you draw a helicopter card and then the second card drawn is the water rises. Well, the answer is yes, you can, because you draw them one at a time and you can play a card instantly you draw it. But it's not explained explicitly in the rules, and it should be, because as I said earlier, this is such an easy game that the rulebook should be crystal clear. Unfortunately, it is not. A small issue concerned my copy of the game, because I do not know if this is a problem concerning the Polish version or a bigger lot of games. In my copy of the game, one of the miniatures, the Earth Stone, was not well cut. It couldn't stand upright. I had to cut a small piece of plastic which was underneath in order to enable it to stand upright. So as I said a few moments ago, I do not know if this is only an issue concerning my copy of the game, but because I am giving you my thoughts about this title, I decided also to mention it because maybe this is a problem concerning some more copies. Not an issue because I removed this small plastic part in 1-2 minutes and I had an excellent miniature which I can use. But this is something which you might expect to not to happen when buying a game published as a high quality product. I'd say that a problem concerns replay value, because this is a game in which you have only one mode, only one scenario. The island will look the same each time. You won't be creating different islands. This only difference will concern the place where the different tiles are located, because this is always random. But the shape will be always the same. We do not have any variance. The only thing that you can adjust is the difficulty level, because you can decide to begin the game with a higher level of water from the start, or at a lower level if you want to play an easy game. But this, in my opinion, doesn't increase the replay value of the game sufficiently. There should have been some small tweaks, some small additional rules which would enable you to, for instance, create a different shape of the island, add some additional rules which would enable you to tailor the game to your own needs. I'd say that with what you receive in the box and in the rules, the game is quite repetitive after some time. Of course, each game you'll have a different set of cards, you'll have to visit different locations will be flooded, but still after playing some games you'll have the feeling that you are playing through the same process, that you have the same, that you live the same adventure. There are not enough parameters which would increase this replay value in order to make this game very interesting each time you play it. I have also some concerns when it comes to the balance between the characters that you are using, because you have 6 character cards, but in my opinion they are not balanced, because the joy of playing, for instance, the diver will be, in my opinion, significantly smaller than when playing the explorer. The explorer's capacity is so good. You can both move diagonally, and also you can diagonally secure additional places. You can restore them, you can flip the tiles. Whereas while playing the diver, well, your capacity will sometimes be used maybe once or twice during a game. So you will have this feeling that you have a weaker character. And this is a shame, because when playing such a game, you want to have impact on what happens. You want to contribute to your team, and looking at what your teammates do using their powerful capacities, you might have the feeling that you are, well, part of the team, but you are not contributing enough. Of course, this is such a quick game that you can rapidly replay another game using another character and have maybe a different feeling. But still, I believe that those capacities are not well balanced. Lastly, I'd say that I think that this game, when published in 2010, was quite interesting, but it still made us think of pandemic, because we have some mechanics which are very strictly related to pandemic. So we have both this mechanic concerning the transmission of cards, as well as the motive concerning reshuffling cards which are already on the discard and which will reappear in order to hinder our play. This is something which we already know from Pandemic. So although this is a different game, a different setting, we will have sometimes the feeling that we are playing a version of Pandemic without cubes, without disease, but which still works pretty much in a very similar way. So for people who are looking for something different from Pandemic, Forbidden Island will not be a good choice, because you will have this feeling that you have some very similar mechanics in this game. Having said all that, I believe that Forbidden Island, after 10 years from its release, is still a quite interesting game. due to its very easy and accessible rules, due to its quick gameplay, and due to the fact that this is a game which enables you to have fun in a group of not only gamers but also of people who just want to discover the world of gaming, who want to play something easy. And this is also a game which will be quite enjoyable if you like playing with people who like to negotiate, who like to plan ahead, who like to discuss things, during the game. If you have such a group, you might fully enjoy Forbidden Island without expecting a very high quality design, because this game is not a very high quality design if judged by contemporary standards. It's just okay. It's not something above the current standard, but it's still a very enjoyable experience, and it is still a very pretty, very nice game. This was the review of Forbidden Island, published in 2010 by Gamewright and in Poland by Rebel. Thank you a lot for watching this video. I invite you to our other movies on our YouTube channel. We have some other reviews in English. I invite you also to take a look at our Facebook and Instagram accounts. And if you want to support our channel, take a look at our Patronite account. Have a terrific day and see you next time.